Hello, my name is Bob, and I'm the author of Life and Earth. This is a book that I wrote that's offered free, and it can be downloaded on the internet at lifeandearth.com. And what you see on all these web links on Life and Earth are identical to the book, which you can click here as a PDF and download. It's a little nicer. You can print it out if you want or whatever you like. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is uh, because I've had the book done for about 15 years. It's gradually processed. It's basically to help us help the world. In fact, let's just see what it says here. The subject matter revolves around the possibility that the side effects of our rapidly growing technologies um, jeopardize the future of life and the planet. In the grand scheme of life and our existence, I can think of no greater concern. So basically, it's about technology and how, in the last few hundred years, life has had a huge impact on this planet that's 24,000 miles around and hasn't changed for some 5 billion years. And we're changing the surface of the planet and the atmosphere, and it's affecting life and the planet itself. And it's happening at an accelerated rate. And this is a huge issue. We're dealing with climate change and nuclear weapons that don't occur naturally on the surface of the Earth, possibly AI and how it'll affect us, our huge population growth, and possibly human made viruses that wouldn't occur in nature. So the book is not really just about the environment. It's actually a book of philosophy and how the human um, how humans, since we are basically responsible for the future now for all life, such as these beautiful animals and creatures you see on the top of the page. Um, we're like the custodians, and we hold the paintbrush, and we can paint it however we want. But how we paint this picture of the future depends on how we work together and how we conceive it. And in order to conceive a world that we want to see carry on, we have to decide what we value, and we have to understand the environment and what we are within the environment, what life is. And these are the grandest questions of all that we try to answer. So these are addressed in here, and I'm just going to go through some of the links here. There's the preface, which you can see here, which basically hones in on one of the main issues, and it's related to survival. And basically, we have two approaches: competition or cooperation. And normally, competition, survival of the fittest. Certain species will survive, but because of the technology and how we're impacting the planet, unless we can, like countries can cooperate with the weapons, such as nuclear weapons and so on, we jeopardize the entire game. The chessboard that we've played upon since the beginning of life, that has endured through survival of some species and the deterioration or end of others, um, the actual chessboard, the game is threatened. The planet is threatened. So maybe not now, maybe in 10 years, maybe 100, but we certainly have the capacity to do it, and we're on that trajectory. So we really need to think about how we're going to possibly cooperate, and also what we're going to cooperate on. So I discussed the book, and give some preliminary information. I have a little section on my dog, which you've all had pets probably, and how he was very important, and it demonstrates to me just how a lot of simple creatures, um, there's a lot of good in them that we could learn from them. So I go on to the introduction, and I discuss the problem um, in more detail, how difficult it is for each of us to think that we as individuals could make a difference. Um, but we do, because we are a part of everything that is. So everything we do, whether it's directly impacting the future or indirectly through people we teach or things we do. Um, it's a chain of events, and everything we do. Some people more important than others, but we're all important. Um, so I discuss the various side effects of technology, and basically my comment is that it's not the specific technologies that are the problem. They're like the branches on a tree. It's not it's not the technology, because like climate change or nuclear weapons or whatever may threaten us possibly. It's how we work together to handle them, how the countries of the world collectively learn to gather information and understand these things and react and pull back when necessary, because there just might be things like Pandora's box, where if we open it, we're destined to um, not survive. And we need to be able to collectively pull back if we are faced with that. So it's not necessarily even the technologies that we're faced with today, it's what we don't know about that might unfold in the future. So the key is understanding uh, how we might work together, and understanding the reasons, which often have to do with conflicting beliefs and our economic interests. So we discuss various things and how we can um, move forward into the future. So let's carry on here. And I go through the process of defining technology. And this is, in my words, my perception, because I feel that technology, when we think of technology, we often envision complex machines, computers, and communication devices. It seems so overwhelming. But really, though, technology is more of an idea than a thing, and much simpler than one might think. So I take, for example, a chimp that eats termites and uses a stick to pull the termites out of the ground. And in a sense, that's a form of technology. So basically, all creatures, as we manipulate matter and energy in our environment, we we create a type of technology. And from a uh, going towards humans, one of the things we've learned to do, for example, is we started to make bows and arrows, and then we've learned to make gunpowder, and then nuclear weapons, and to kind of emphasize just the impact of technology and what we can do. When you think of like a rhinoceros or a lion, and their physical strength, their horn that rhinoceros has, that maybe evolved over part of its survival for uh, who knows how long. Um, a, an individual, a human who has the intelligence, could simply take a stick and put, shave down the rock and put it at the end and make a spear. And all of a sudden, what took nature thousands and thousands of years to create, a human has been able to do this so quickly. So uh, uh, basically, I say, with his newfound ability to create technology, he would now evolve at the speed of gazelle, while other animals would be left behind to evolve at a snail's pace through natural selection. So this technology that we're dealing with is really changing the way we impact the planet. And um, I go through defining that, and then I also go through uh, some of the side effects, such as potential global warming and climate change. We're all trying to understand this, and just whether and how much our processing of the resources through our increased population and needs, even with notwithstanding our attempts to manage it and be clean, how it is changing the atmosphere and the surface of the planet, on which we have endured for millions of years, and through our ups and downs have endured. But possibly we may not continue to do that. A discussion of our population growth, uh, the impacts of nuclear weapons, and can you imagine if the nuclear bomb was by chance 1,000 times stronger and 1,000 times easier to make? Given such power and the limited size of the Earth, this might be like the two countries having hand grenades, like two boys capable of destroying each other in their sandbox, the entire Earth. So we're going through this process where maybe it's not so bad yet, but it's not going to get less. And whether we can manage this, it's not looking too good because countries cooperating is not not uh, um, seeming to work too well, given our different economic interests and belief systems and so on. So how do we get on the same page? So I do discuss different scenarios to kind of emphasize why we're stuck like we are. Like, what if the surface of the Earth was 100 times bigger than it is, maybe the size of Jupiter? Then the side effects might be not as bad. But the fact is, we're on a planet that's limited in size, and as we're trying to do, maybe go to other planets that might help. But is that really a solution? It helps diversify the problem, but how realistic is that? And really, ultimately, don't we have to fix it before we do it? Otherwise, we're just going to carry the disease or the problem elsewhere in some form or another. So how are we going to come to some kind of education system or global understanding that's not only implemented but accurate and aligned with what we need to do in order to survive? So a little discussion on that, and then I go into the philosophical side. Okay, I talk about key things that are very important for us to understand about ourselves, humans, life, such as destiny, and what is destiny. So destiny and the universe, how it began, possibly with the Big Bang or whatever it was. This process of matter and energy flowing, and we are a part of it. And the destiny of the Earth, the same way. The way the Earth evolved, the ecosystems evolved, and so on. And then our own life, just whether we really do have the ability to make choices, because this is important, because that's what we have to do. We have to decide whether our choices that we make today are important, and whether they will make a difference, and how they're not only going to affect us in this 100 years in which you and I live, because we might only think about that, but what about the next 100 years or five centuries, or 100 centuries? All the life, not just humans, but animals, creatures, they are dependent on the choices we make in this 10, 20, 50 years. And we're like a chain, and this chain may actually, we may be the link that breaks and causes the end of what could be, or causes it to be very difficult. So we're going through a very important phase in the evolution of life, and we are it. So this is a discussion on destiny. And then I get into other subjects which are related to the human condition and life condition. For example, evolution of the human mind, an attempt to understand what is this process to reason that we have, abstract thought, for us to look at, like, I kind of look at this scenario as if an animal might look at the world two-dimensionally. Like, when I think of a physical world, I imagine a creature in the moment, like a bird singing in the forest or a rabbit eating grass in a meadow. It is the world we feel when we dive in the ocean and we're revived by a tingling sensation of cold water. In the moment when we plunge in the water, all our concerns in our minds of our past and future are erased for that moment of a sensation of now. That's the two-dimensional world, the world that we normally immerse ourselves in. But we have the capacity to remember in detail. Of course, some animals can do that too. It's part of survival. But we can also extrapolate and imagine, and that becomes our abstract thought. The world of abstract thought brings minds like words like conceive, imagine, hypothesize, extrapolate, theorize, even dream. To me, all these words describe the world that we create beyond the physical world of matter and energy. This is where our belief systems come from. This is where the concept of time comes from, probabilities, and it's also the way that we can create our technologies. We can even imagine a building. and do all the engineering on paper before we even create it. So this is a discussion of why we are different than other creatures, because it's important to understand what it is that has changed in our way of thinking to enable us to create virtually infinite belief systems, some of them aligned with physical reality, many of them not, which take us into all kinds of strange situations. For example, we might believe in something that will cause us to uh, do something very bad, even though it's just an idea. And whereas animals might not do that, they'll just respond to the environment. So we are in a very complex world of belief systems and religions and so on, and we really need to kind of collect all of this and really digest it all together. All the countries possibly to uh, establish a collective understanding of our condition and where we want to go. So that's discussed under abstract thought, uh, our unique ability to remember from the past. So often, for example, we'll be fighting for hundreds of years, two countries, because of something that happened hundreds of years ago. And you think of, for example, the buffalo in the plains of North America who were exterminated, and uh, where they roamed the plains and they were the predominant creatures. If there's a buffalo now that's roaming around, it's not going to go, "I hate these humans." It doesn't remember. It doesn't have the capacity to uh, remember these type of things. And it of course, it can be beneficial to us too, but it often causes a lot of conflicts that endure. So there's so much to understand about human nature and how we can work together, and that's part of this reason for abstract thought. That leads to the very important subject of our beliefs and assumptions, which are kind of like, to me, uh, uh, our concepts of the world, our perception, our interpretation of the world, part of it from instinct and much of it is learned. But we interpret the world in order to survive, and often our interpretations are inaccurate. We think we see things. For example, when we look at um, something, an object, we think we see it immediately, but really only we're seeing the reflected light. When I look at an object, we think it is the object we see, but it is really the light being reflected from that object. So we make a lot of assumptions in life, and a lot of them comfort us, which leads to our belief systems, and then we often compete over and fight over our belief systems. Um, so I try to put forth this idea of keeping an open mind. And I give a puzzle example that one of my teachers gave me in grade 9, where you have three dots like this, and you have to put them together with four straight lines without taking your pencil off the paper. So you might normally do this, for example, but you wouldn't get all of them. So the correct method is to do something like this. Okay. And the point is, in order to solve some problems, sometimes we have to look outside of the problem. Okay, we have to have an open mind. If we make certain assumptions, we'll never come to accurate conclusions about what's going on. And for example, that's what telescopes and microscopes have given us. They've helped us look outside of the world we see, so we can look into the stars, and we can look into the micro world and see all the microorganisms, things that we couldn't see, and our world gets bigger and we understand it better. This whole subject goes into reality and survival, which, in a sense, our perception of reality is, again, an assumption that we construct in order to survive. We see things functionally and physically, uh, and they become our standards. And I go through this process of saying, take a picture like this and define how many things you see, and you might see a bicycle and a light over here and a building. You might say there's 1,000 things. But then you break that down and you say, well, in physics, we know there's only 100 elements or so. So how can there be 100 elements but 1,000 things? And then we go to those elements and we say, well, they might be subatomic particles like protons, neutrons, and electrons. So everything's made of the same thing. So we have to ask ourselves, this reality that we interpret, if it is just some form of energy or few particles, what is it? What reason is it? And what is it really? And how do we want to paint it ourselves? And in order to survive and to survive in a way that we can enjoy the things that we do every day that give us the reason to live. Okay, so this is a very important section on reality. I discuss the possible uh, formation of the universe and various things and consciousness um, and the idea of right and wrong and whether just surviving, however we do it, is the only thing right. Okay, and how we might do it. So very ethereal uh, uh, topics that I try to pull together, and I highlight also the importance of science and beliefs because to me science is just another belief system. It's just that it relies on the flow of matter and energy, like the stars, and matter, energy flowing, and we understand it. So we get things like physics, mathematics. Um, I go down here. Mathematics, chemistry, biology. Our understanding of the interrelationship of the flow of all these things that occur, and that's the science. And though it's just another belief system, because it's based on the flow of matter and energy, which is generally predictable, just as gravity is generally predictable, these laws are consistent. We don't question that the sun will come up every day and the moon will go around the earth every day, and we understand the flow of this. And there's no special belief system behind this other than that based on the science of it all. So it's understanding science and 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 the flow of matter and energy is so critical in our collective understanding of our condition in the universe and where we want to go. And if we allow ourselves to get too sidetracked by our belief systems, ultimately we may end up making big mistakes. Okay, and I discuss this a lot. And so ultimately, the accuracy of our beliefs is measured by the consistency of their results. So if somebody believes in something wrong, they will fail. If they believe in something that's accurate, uh, they'll probably succeed. Discuss probabilities and so on, and also non-scientific beliefs. And just as an example, going further, now imagine that one leader who can deploy their quantum nuclear weapons, assume there's these weapons that could believe they could destroy the planet, that leader believes that the world is corrupt. He believes that everyone in the world, upon their deaths, will be reborn on another planet in another galaxy. They will live in peace and live happily forever. Would you want this leader, based on his belief, to accept the weapons in his country? Would you want the leader to impose the consequences of his belief on you? So our belief systems, our diversity is wonderful between countries, but there is a certain necessity, given the complexity and nature of our technologies, to get on the same page and to get on a right page, but not all get on the same page where we end up going the wrong direction. So we have to be very careful what we believe in, and science, I believe, is something critical. Not to say that all our beliefs about different things cannot take us to better places and may even be accurate in their own way. They're subjective. Who's to say? Ultimately, it's the consequences of what we choose to believe and do that will be the measure of our success. If you have two planets and one planet bases their choices on a certain belief system, they may die off. Another planet, for example, if a comet or an asteroid is coming and they choose to create the technology to leave and go into a space station or to another planet, they survive. Ultimately, the consequences are the measure of, I guess, right and wrong, because those are the ones that are left to say what is right and wrong. So, going further, I discuss going further on science. I discuss the nature of scientific data because it's so important, and how it's important that we have accessibility to that data, which the internet is a fantastic way for the world to collectively understand now. But unfortunately, it's not always used in the best way. And then, even when we have the data and it's accurate, and we we uh, um, we don't necessarily apply it. And it's important that we apply data, and we all have accessibility to it. Okay, so that section there about understanding ourselves is all part of that. And I also added something about AI, because AI is almost like, to me, an extension of human life and our nature of our understanding. I do a lot of programming. I've done a lot of programming in my life, and understanding the concept of how we think: if, then, else, do, while, until. And that's the way we operate. And we have memory. And that's what our AI is doing, our computers are doing. It's replicating these processes that we go through decision making, and it's doing it faster and collectively and with greater memory. And this is why we become placed in a precarious position. And ultimately, we may even be able to create entities that out out outpace us in all these abilities that we've gained through natural evolution. And we have to question ourselves as whether we want to actually do that. So actually discuss whether AI may have a consciousness, and how it may or may not threaten us. So all of this is in the section under understanding ourselves. I'm going to move on with this video a little faster. There's a discussion on conflict, and this gets into our belief systems and territorial differences and how we might get over our differences. Economic disparity, and that's a big issue, because some people don't have as much as other people. Some countries have less than others. Do we help each other? Why would we cooperate and help each other? When wouldn't we help each other? What is our responsibility? Um, the importance of uh, three three key elements in survival, which I discuss as basically resources and hard work, applying ourselves. And probably the most important one these days is innovation and technology, because it's like a leverage. It gives us so much greater leverage than our past ways of surviving, which simply working hard, or just having the resources. Technology is like, gives us a thousand. It's like a bulldozer. We might, for millions of years, only been able to use our hands or shovels, and so we could work hard, and we might have been able to make better shovels. But ultimately, when we get the technology to make bulldozers or bombs or whatever, all of a sudden the game the game board has changed. So this is a discussion on economic disparity, and why it's important at this point where we might cooperate. A detailed discussion of the difference between cooperation and competition, and why they're both important. And competition has allowed and still allows us to survive, so it is important, just as it is in business. But cooperation and the benefits of the synergies from cooperation are so important that just like technology, they can give us the leverage to do things that we probably could never do otherwise. And then I give a cooperative example, and I use a human body, and say, now imagine the human body represents Earth, and all the organs inside, such as the brain's lung, heart and intestines, kidneys, etc., represent different countries. So imagine the lungs as the USA, the heart is Russia, the blood is China. Imagine all the countries working in order to create an amazing organism where they cooperate to explore space, heal, and compensate each other, and exhibit a synergistic strength between them that ensures the survival of life on Earth. So this is an analogy, and this book is full of analogies. I want to just go back to a section that I missed since I finished this, and I went back to the value of life on Earth. And this to me is one of the most important sections because it discusses our condition as humans, our senses. What is it that gives us the will to live? And there's a picture of me with my dog when I was a kid. I don't have that much hair now. Okay. And why other creatures? Why we would care for other creatures? Why does it matter? And it's not about how many we save or what we do. It's really about the gesture to me, because the gesture of showing empathy towards the earth, to each other, to other creatures. If you have a world leader who's a little boy or a little girl who showed that when they were a child, and they were placed in a position as a leader impacting the entire world, it becomes a precedent. So it may not have meant a lot about whatever they did then, but that precedent of that behavior may be used in a situation where it affect the entire planet. Okay. In this section, I also discussed how important it is for us not to get lost in our egos, that we are simply a reflection of Earth. As Earth evolves and it changes, we change. If the oxygen goes down on the planet, possibly our biological condition will change such that we can learn to breathe it better, or when there's less oxygen. But it's important to know that we can only adapt so much, just as all creatures do. But if you place a human out in space without a spacesuit, they simply can't adapt quick enough because their biology isn't made for that. So they need a spacesuit. They need a simulated Earth. And ultimately, that's the two ways we're going to be able to explore planets. We're either going to be able to terraform or change the planet or create space stations where we can maintain our biological state and explore, or we may have to change ourselves. And who knows, we may end up as robots or cyborgs or something. And in that case, we would not need to breathe air and we might be able to explore the planets. Whether that's a good thing at all in itself, which is something that I kind of get to as I get nearer to the end here. So I discuss here, we'll get on to this as we get near the end of the video, how another planet survived. I take all these thoughts I've discussed with you and basically say, what if there were aliens? Not that I'm suggesting there are, but what if they were? And they came to us and said, hey, we are the sole survivors of all the species in the universe. And the reason why we're able to be here is because we figured out what to do. And we have the energy, we created the energy to be able to move ourselves to your planet. And we see your growing species. And we're just going to tell you we're here. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we can tell you that, you're faced with some major decisions. And this is what we did. And actually, I should have said that we won't tell you what we'll do, because they actually do tell us what they did. It doesn't mean that we followed it. So that's what this is about: working together, dealing with a form of energy that they learned, and instead of progressing forward with it, our progress did not come without conflicts. But gradually, our world leaders became unified over many of your decades. Over times, disparity in wealth were resolved because education had caused a decrease in population, and so on and so on. This is all hypothetical, but it is my interpretation of what we might be able to do so that we can survive as a species, and not only just survive, but enjoy what gives us the will to survive, and think of future generations and what they and why we need to think of the future and other generations. Getting near the end, meeting with world leaders, I basically say, if you or I were standing in front of the UN or in front of all the world leaders, what would you say about all of this? What would you tell them? So I go through my life and I sort of suggest what we might do. We must acknowledge that the side effects of technology threaten life on Earth. We must accept that cooperation between countries is probably our best solution. We must improve our global intelligence of science and apply it to the future. We must improve our global intelligence of non-scientific beliefs. We must create a global education system to convey global intelligence to all. And ultimately, um, I do go to some very specific about what to do for world leaders, because we all talk about, I want to solve climate, I want to solve nuclear weapons or whatever, but we don't put down a detailed plan. And I have tried to do that. And originally, I didn't have this next section in the book. This is new. It's called The First Step. And ultimately, my recommendation is a type of universal philosophy that complements our existing cultural ways, which leads to a global education system. But ultimately, I didn't go into like, how are we going to create this global education system? How are we going to create this global understanding? So I said, all countries create a plan for our future. And that was what this was about, putting forth a number of questions to them and having like maybe 10 or 20 scientists and philosophers and all some of the best minds in each of the nearly 200 countries in the world, in an unbiased way, putting together their thoughts and dealing with these questions. And these would be committees, like, for example, how will cultures communicate in the future? Must we follow the same path? Population, just what is it to have too much or too little? And what does that mean? Our conflicting economic interests. How do we cooperate with technological side effects? Where is our home? How many planets must we live on? Is one enough? Is three enough? Is 100? Why do we need to go everywhere? What is it that matters? In what form shall we live? What if we could extend ourselves into some kind of different condition? Is this what we want to do? Why would we want to do this? Do, do we want to be imprinted and duplicated? Why does this matter? Does it matter that we live to be 1,000 years for each of us? Or should we have the natural life cycle that we go through that's worked for millions of years, something that generally is how we work? We have to be very careful about how we toy with technology and biotechnology to paint our future. How do we care, or do we care for future generations? Is our purpose only to survive and avoid pain? Or maybe we need pain to understand pleasure, you know? So, and how do we allocate our limited resources? We may think we have um, all the resources we need, but for example, there might be a problem right now where there's an asteroid headed our way, and it's so important right now, even though we don't know, that we put all our resources into one direction, so we're prepared. So, for this event, which we may not know of yet. So, when can we slow down? When do we have to be uh, cautious about our resources and what matters, right? So these questions, these are just 10 general questions, but these are examples of things that these committees would deal with, because recognizing we are alone and we are responsible for the future. And that picture there is a picture of Earth, the blue dot, looking from outside and making us realize that is where we are. You and I are there, and no one's been away from there any significant distance. And so we are alone, we are responsible. What are we going to do here? So I propose that these countries, the country committees, would get together as a group. Let's call the collection of them the Global Committee for Life and Earth. And they would come together, they would discuss all these thoughts, create the Memorandum for Life and Earth, which would be kind of like a guideline that would discuss philosophy and science and be used to create a global education system. I term as the GES, and I term the GCLE as the Global Committee for Life and Earth. And uh, we we basically, there are no guarantees, but we do our best, and we come up with this memorandum, which I have not updated, but this is what I had done before, which discusses many of the details I have, and then I tell you about my vision for the future. To end this video, thank you for getting this far and listening. I hope you read the book, and I hope it leads to you making some choices and contributions that will help. help us, help the world, help life, not just humans, creatures, everything, and to help us exhibit the qualities that of us as entities that will help us fulfill whatever goal we find is important, which I would suggest is simply to survive, but to do it in a way that gives us the greatest pleasure. And that's why this book discusses that section on pleasure, because we need to understand what it is to feel pleasure and pain and how important it is. I'm going to end it with this last line of the book. However different we are in color, culture, wealth, or education, we are all alive. Maybe this common bond is enough so that we might work together to protect life on Earth and take it to the future that we all envision it might be. So that's it. I do have another section that's not in the book called the Life on Earth Project. This actually says that in July of 2021, I had sent a complimentary copy of the book to many groups. These are only a few of them, but I sent it to 500 to 1,000 world leaders and environmentalists, and I plan on at some point in the near future doing the new book with that new section that I said the first step, and sending a hard copy to there's the hard copy to important, or not important because we're all important, but parties that might be able to take in these ideas and and turn them into positive changes for life on the planet, which in the end is for you and me and all of us and our pets and all life. And probably more important than those, not to be forgotten, is the future generations, which we are only the tip of the iceberg, and they are the thousands of times the tip that may or may not come to exist because of us. Thank you for taking the time. And just a final note again, you can go back to the homepage, to the preface, and download the book. And feel free to email it to anyone you wish to do so and pass this link on. Thank you.